Welcome back for Module 11, Series 65 and 66 from Series 7 Specialists. We're glad to have you, glad to be a part of your success, and hope that you're getting a lot out of these. We're in the state law section, the Uniform Securities Act, and starting to talk about custody. And so let's just go ahead and get into this. Custody, remember, if we're talking about investment advisors, custody is somewhat unusual. If we're talking about broker-dealers, it happens every day, and all of those rules and regulations, they're lined out, just chapter and verse, and supervised and enforced, the whole 9 yards. And so, but with advisors, you've got a different story. Advisors typically don't have physical possession of customer securities and funds. So, in fact, one of the things that I like to have a little bit of fun with is to just use a little bit of misspelling here and talk about the difference between custody and discretion, because if we misspell custody, then we can use that first letter to say that we keep stuff. Okay? But if we have discretion, then basically all we do is to decide. So in other words, the custody is a big touch of the customer's resources. We got our arms around them. They're right here. We're holding them. It's like I say, just hands all over them. Discretion is more like a chess game, where we'll reach over and we'll just move this chess player and we'll move it around like so. Yeah, we have a touch, but it's just a tiny little fingertip touch, because we're not actually holding them except just to move the pieces. So big touch, little touch here. If we have neither custody nor discretion, then we have no touch at all. And that's important to remember as we go a little bit further into the Uniform Securities Act. So generally speaking, custody, keeping this stuff, is not allowed. If it is allowed in this state in the first place, first of all, the administrator has to be notified. Why? There's an opportunity for somebody to steal. If I'm the administrator, and there's an opportunity in my state for one of my investors to be stolen from, I want to know about it. So I've got to tell the administrator. All right, the advisor must comply with the federal law, and this is one of the reasons I want you to take notes. The easiest way is to go back and look at the notes that we had under the federal law, but just in a nutshell, quarterly statements. We advise of their adverse financial conditions, and those audited financial statements for those with whom the advisor has custody, or for whom he has custody. And discretion, again, is not the same thing. Now, still in the definitions here, a sale or to sell, or an offer to sell. A sale is actually disposing of a security for value. We get something back that has value. An offer to sale is an attempt to do that. Now, if I say, look, I'll sell you this piece of paper for $1, I've just made an offer to sell that piece of paper. But if I say to you, if somebody out there would say, Dan, I'll pay you $1 for that sheet of paper, I bet you that they would wind up owning it by the end of the day. Well, now I haven't really made an offer to sell. What I've done is that I've solicited an offer to buy. What happens in either one of them? I give you the paper, you give me the buck. It's the same thing. It's what we were talking about with federal law about going back around in the back door. No. If the front door is locked, you can't go in the back even if somebody forgot. You're still trespassing. Okay? So same thing, solicitation of an offer to buy is the same thing as making an offer to sell. All right, and then let's see, then sales do include the following. You'll get some questions on these in particular, so I would be conversant with these situations. A bonus that's included with or attached to another item sold. Specifically, the best illustration we've got is selling stock or bonds that have warrants attached. All right, you buy the stock, you'll get an extra 5 warrants. We'll give them to you. No, you won't. No, you won't. The analogy I like to make here is, you go into your neighborhood drugstore and they've got the bottle of shampoo that has the big bottle, and then it's got shrink wrap around not only the big bottle but a little travel size. Or maybe it's the conditioner that they have the travel. But anyway, you get this if you buy that. Well, what happens if you break the shrink wrap and take the little freebie out the door? You're shoplifting, for crying out loud. Okay, it's the same thing with securities. If you've got to buy this in order to get that for free, we didn't give you anything at all. You bought the whole thing. You've got to buy that whole package that's shrink wrapped together. All right, you just can't break them out separately. That's a sale. That's no gift. And gifts of assessable securities. And this is kind of strange, okay? Because assessable securities, by and large, are gone. I actually saw a stock certificate that was assessable one time. It was in a frame, mounted, picture frame, mounted on the wall of a broker-dealer's office. Where they came up with it, I have no idea. I would love to have it myself because it's so rare. Bank stocks used to be, especially, others as well, but particularly bank stocks used to be assessable. So that if the bank went under, remember, deposits are liabilities. Who made good on those deposits? Well, the bank would to the degree possible, but then if there wasn't enough money to go around, they'd be knocking on the shareholder's door and say, hey, look, we need more money. That's an assessment, where somebody can come up to you and say, are you a stockholder? Yeah, well, here's a bill. Now, what happens when we buy something? They say, here's a bill, pay the bill, you own it, right? What happens with an assessment? Here's a bill, pay the bill. Hold on. If I give you something that has the potential for somebody to come up later on down the road and say, here's a bill, I sold it to you, because the potential to receive a bill is the same thing as getting a bill. You bought it. You're going to have to pay either way. So a gift, if I give you an assessable security, then I haven't given you a darn thing except a bill. So that's a sale. You're not going to see these anywhere except on the test. I love it. But anyway, those are in fact sales. These are not sales. Gifts of non-assessable securities. When my daughter was born, my dad bought her some stock in a major corporation. And you know what? It paid for her college. Thanks, Dad. Appreciate it. Okay? That was a gift. You just gave it to her. Nobody anywhere in the world could ever come up to her or to me as custodian and say, Dan, here's a bill. They just couldn't do it. That was a gift. And I appreciate that gift. All right. A pledge of securities as collateral, like in a margin account. Do it all the time in a margin account. That's not a sale. We're just pledging as collateral for a loan. Or with a bank, we can do the same thing. Stock dividends, stock splits, those are not sales. What are they? They're dividends. They're splits. That's it. We get additional shares, but why? It's because we've already paid the bill. There's no other bill coming. Okay, it's ours to start with, and we just go ahead and get it. And mergers or other types of exchanges of stock where there's no additional money coming into the picture. Again, what is it? ABC and XYZ, they decide to merge and become A and Z Consolidated Industries. So you send in your ABC stock, you send in your XYZ stock, you get back the shares of A and Z Consolidated. That's just an exchange. There's no bill that comes to you. And so therefore that's not a sale. Securities, okay? Securities, there's an appendix at the end of the outline, and it has a detailed list. Now, I would look it over, I'd read it maybe twice, maybe three times. Twice should do, okay? But really, it's much more important to know what's not a security than what is a security. And that's why I relegate that list to the appendix. And instead, what I like to do is to look at categories, just big buckets that we have. So let's just look at the big buckets, okay? Stocks, right, common stock, preferred stock, convertible preferred stock. If it's stock, it's a security. Bonds, or anything that looks like a bond. So a note, that's a bond. An evidence of indebtedness, it's a bond. All right, just take a generic term on these things. Options. Now this one's going to become real important, because if you see the word option, again, it's kind of like the fly in the soup. That word option says that we have a security. All right, but then limited partnerships, DPPs, like I say, just limited participation programs, private placements of these things where you actually own the business operations. And then there are other unusual securities, like for instance, one that test writers can't resist is whiskey warehouse receipts. Now, I've heard how they work, but I really, I kind of get it. But what I really am interested in is if it shows up on the test, it's a security. I don't need to know how they work. And there are a lot of these things that, like voting trust certificate. I could talk about a voting trust certificate till you got really bored. Or I could say, if you see it on the list, it's a security. All right? And those unusual ones, kind of look at. In fact, as far as I know, a whiskey warehouse receipt, basically you buy it, and then you go and take the test. And after the test, then you go straight to the whiskey warehouse and either celebrate or commiserate with the other folks who are then cashing in their whiskey warehouse. That's not it. But anyway, gotta have fun with it. All right, so common threads through the names of these things. If you have a certificate of, unless it's like a bank certificate of deposit, then that's not a security, that is just a deposit. But if it says security of, especially on this test, anything other than just a security of deposit, it's going to be a security. Participation in, or if you have a certificate of participation in, whoa, hey, there's a double bingo. Oil and gas. Is it possible to have oil and gas operations as not a security? Absolutely, but not on this test. On this test, if you see oil and gas, it's a safe assumption that it's a security. Why the heck are they writing about it if it's not? Okay, so variable, dead giveaway that it is a security. Interest in, again, that's going to be a security. And another thing is if it leads to a security, if it turns into a security, if it takes the place of a security, if it does something instead of a security, it's a security. So if there's a thread between whatever it is you're talking about and a security, then it's a security. All right, the generic definition of a security as defined by the courts. In the Howey case, you won't need to know that for the test. But if you have some spare time, you might want to Google it. Believe it or not, it's a fairly short little decision by the Supreme Court. Fascinating story. And but that said, that there are actually three components you need to look for to see if this, whatever it may be, is in fact a security. First of all, does it have a monetary investment or an investment of something of value, of monetary value? Okay. Is it a common enterprise? And is it with a goal of making money? And do you have third-party management? So you have investment into a common enterprise, you and somebody else. Okay? An expectation of profit. If you don't have that, it's just a hobby. If you don't have other folks, it's what you do. It's your job. All right? And then, is there third-party management? Because if there's not, again, it's your job. That's what you do. So those are required. Things that are not securities, and again, it's right here on the outline. These are much more important to know than what is a security. So just know these things because you will see them. Okay, we said that variable was a dead giveaway that it is a security. Fixed is a dead giveaway that it's not. So fixed annuities, fixed life insurance, those are not securities, whereas variable annuities, variable life, those are. Retirement plans, all right? So you go to the store and you pick up some bread, some beans, and some bananas. Take it to the checkout stand and they put it in a paper bag. The question says all the following are grocery items except A, beans, B, bread, C, bananas, or D, the bag. What's the bag? The bag is what you take grocery items and put it into the bag. The retirement plan is not a security, it's the bag for stocks, for bonds, for options, for whiskey warehouse receipts. But it itself is not a security, so retirement plans are not. And then you've got actually the 5 C's. You've got collectibles, so artwork, Ming vase, that's stuff, all right? So that's not one. Commodities. So futures contracts, forward contracts, something like that, that's not a security. Now, what if you have an option on a contract? There's that fly in the suit. It's an option. Therefore, and options are securities. In fact, it probably demonstrates the best with currencies, because the yen is not a security. The yen is a currency. An option on the yen is an option. Therefore, it's a security. Futures on the yen are futures contracts. They're commodities. Therefore, it's not a security. Options on yen futures are options. Therefore, that would be a security. Okay? So like I say, options, you have it, but currencies or commodities, collectibles for that matter, and then also if you have condos, those are not, as long as there's not a pool. Yeah, you put in a pool and you've got a security. Well, wait a minute, Dan, here we go swimming and all of a sudden it's a security? They say there's no lifeguard on duty. How can that be secure? No. Not talking about that kind of a pool. We're talking about a pooled revenue system. In fact, I own a condo. Would love to sell it, but I own a condo, and it's just a rental property. That's all it is. I rent it. Let's see. There's no third-party management. It's not a common enterprise. I have an expectation of profit, but it's not a common enterprise. Let's say that somebody wanted to swap a condo here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, for one in Destin, Florida. Hey, I'd probably do it. Okay? How would that work? I could go down there a couple of weeks out of the year. Okay? There's IRS regulations on that. But the rest of the time, what would happen is that somebody from Poughkeepsie and somebody from Gillette, Wyoming, and somebody from where it would go down to, they didn't want to be on the beach, and so they'd rent my condo, mine, and the other 499 that were in the complex. And the on-site property manager would collect those rents, do the maintenance, do the cleaning, things like that, and would then, at the end of the month or the end of the quarter, whenever, he would send me and the other 499 owners our 1/500th of the net proceeds from those rentals. What have you got? You've got a pooled revenue sharing arrangement, and with that, let's see, you have me and 499 others. You got it. Took some money to get there, an investment into a common enterprise, right? Why did I do it? Because I like to go down there, but also I'm thinking the thing's going to appreciate over the years. So there's an expectation of profit. I want some cash flow. Yeah, expectation of profit. And do I do the cleanup work? Do I do the rentals, collect them? No, it's third-party management. See, if there's that pooled revenue sharing arrangement, then that becomes a security even though it is a condo. So that big picture definition is going to trump the fact that it is a condo. And then finally, confirmations. Confirmations are not securities. They're evidence that we have done a transaction in securities, but they themselves are not securities. They're just an accurate accounting of history. Here's what went on. Oh, by the way, it had to do something with securities. But it's not a security in and of itself. Know those, because it's very important to know those, much more so than what is a security. Like I say, if you read over that list a couple of times, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. All right, so let's go ahead and look then real quickly at licensing and registration requirements. So we start out with agents. Again, what we said earlier was that agent, that word, says it's state law, it's an individual, and it's a broker-dealer environment. So agents must be registered with a broker-dealer or an issuer in this state to sell. No, there's nothing in between the word sell and securities. So if it's a security and there's no except after it, so if I want to sell exempt securities in this state, I've got to register. If I want to sell non-exempt securities in this state, I got to register. It doesn't really make a rip because they're securities, and if I want to sell them here, I got to register. Okay, so all I sell is T-bills. I don't have to register. That's So what you think? They're securities, registered. Advisory representatives. You got to represent somebody. And so they have to be registered with an advisor and then register themselves at the state level in order to give advice in this state. Initial application includes a consent to service of process. This is something that's filed with the initial application, and it's good for the duration of the registration. Here's what it is, okay? We've been doing business. I've decided that you've been doing something that's unethical, illegal, and you've done me wrong. I'm going to drag your slimy little into court, okay? But the thing is, I can't find you. I got to give you some papers, summons to appear in court, but I can't find you. So my process server, basically what he does, he doesn't even bother trying to find you. He just goes down to the administrator's office. Hello, do you have this person registered with you? So yeah, well, I need to serve them with this summons to appear in court. So, oh really? Well, let me look at the font. Oh, there's a consent to service of process. I'll take it. So the process server says, okay, and the instant that the administrator's fingertips touch that piece of paper, it's not like you've been served because you allow the administrator to accept that summons on your behalf. And it's not just as good as giving it to you, it's giving it to you. But maybe he doesn't know where I lived. That's your problem. You need to keep your information up to date. The instant that the fingers touch the paper in the administrator's office, you've been served. That's consent to service of process. Again, filed initially, good for the duration. You never have to file it again. Applications are effective at noon on the 30th day after application. If I get to talking to my buddy and say, hey, look, I had this happen, I didn't put it on the account because I didn't want to muddy the waters. Whoa, wait a minute, wait. You know, if you leave that off of your application, that's going to be materially misleading. You need to amend your registration statement. So, okay, so I scurry and I put this stuff on and say, resets that 30-day clock. Noon the 30th day, okay, assuming that it's not, that there's no problem with it. All renewals are on December the 31st. All renewals. Yeah, I tell you what, I called up a friend of mine who worked for a broker-dealer, and I just wanted to visit with him, and it was like the 28th or so of December. And he said, Dan, look, he said, I really enjoy talking with you, but I am just buried because I've got to take care of all of these state renewals by the 31st. So I'm pulling 16-hour days. I just don't have time because everybody comes due on the 31st. Now, by the way, there's no proration. If I get registered on December the 15th, I'm going to have to pay a full year's fee, and it's going to then expire on the 31st, and I'll have to renew. Okay, so that's something that may come up on your test. No prorating of fees for that partial first year of registration. And if I move from one broker-dealer or investment advisor to another, then basically what happens is that my registration is still good until the end of the year. Now, at the end of the year, my new broker-dealer or investment advisor will re-up my registration, pay the fee at that time. But if I move in August, there's no fee to my new broker-dealer in August. Okay, it's good through the end of the year. All right, so we've hit a point where we can take a little break here. So we'll come back with number 12 and start looking at net capital requirements. And again, I really do appreciate you telling other people about this and supporting us with those little things that it may seem like they're not much. They really mean a lot to us. So comments, likes, and again, probably sharing as much as anything. Really appreciate it. We'll take you to a break. See you in a little bit.